Today on Behind the Gate, we're joined by Sue Bell, founder and executive director of Homeward Trails Animal Rescue, a DC area nonprofit that's found homes for tens of thousands of dogs and cats since 2001. Sue's story is the definition of endurance. She's kept compassion running at scale for over 2 decades through funding cycles, volunteer waves, and endless paperwork without losing sight of the animals at the center. What she's built is remarkable. What keeps it running is worth studying. Sue, thank you for being here today. Please introduce yourself and your work.
Sure. Well, I'm Sue Bell. I am the founder and executive director of Homeward Trails Animal Rescue. I founded the organization back in 2002, very much by accident with no intent to do so, but we've been going strong ever since, starting out as a very small one-person volunteer-only organization to one of the larger private shelters and rescues now in Virginia, 22 plus years later.
What was the moment that turned your rescue from a side passion into this full time mission for you?
Yeah, great question. For years, it was a side passion because I did have a full-time paying job. And then I just realized that what got me up every morning was the drive to save the lives and improve the lives of animals. Back then, there was such a demand for animals and there was such a supply of animals, and those weren't being brought together. So after having done it on the side for a couple years, I just kept imagining what I could do if I could dedicate full-time energy and resources to the project. And I was lucky enough to have had an adopter of one of my dogs who had just lost her AmeriCorps Vista position and came to me and said, "Hey, I would love to help you. And all you got to do is match the pay I was getting in AmeriCorps, which was nothing. And I can give you 40 hours a week." That's too good of an opportunity to pass up. Having someone to assist me and really split the duties allowed me to slowly transition out of my full-time paid work and dedicate it entirely to this. I was lucky in that I had a background in various nonprofits. So I did know a little bit about nonprofit management and fundraising. That certainly helped me transition more quickly than it might most rescuers going into a business that they know nothing
Right.
about.
In those first few years, where did you feel the tension between heart and operations, between wanting to help and then realizing this was a business and you needed a system?
Yeah, probably from day one, taking in animals and recognizing very quickly that they need vaccines, they need dewormings, and they need spay and neuter, and some of them need medical care, and trying to figure out how to pay for that. For the first many years, it was all funded by myself privately. Uh, Decisions had to be made. There were animals I had to turn away very quickly because I knew I couldn't afford it. These were the years before social media, before even digital cameras. Getting donations from people was not nearly as easy as it was today. I had built financial walls from day one about who I could and who I could not help.
Mm,
And it was incredibly hard, but I feel lucky for having those built-in walls because as social media developed and things like digital cameras and just broader way to communicate with people made our work a little bit easier. That was nice because I wouldn't have liked it to go the opposite direction.
sure.
Having people has just made my work easier in a slightly
Every rescue wants to save more animals, but there's a tipping point
yes.
where saying yes to one more can break something else. How do you decide where that line sits?
I'm terrible at it, to be honest with you. It is because we have so many amazing donors and volunteers. I've shared this with people asking for my advice in running a nonprofit. I say, we do this, but don't follow me. We mostly say yes and then figure out how to pay for it afterwards. That has slowly happened more and more over the years because when we share a story or a need, especially if it's time pressing and dire, our donors always step
Mhm.
up. It can be a $200 transport fee, a $7,000 surgery, or a $10,000 treatment for puppies. It might not come in 24 hours, but it usually comes within days. And that is the luxury of having done this for 22 years, that we've built up a relationship with our donors of trust and transparency and sharing what every dollar they give to us actually does in real time. They trust us and we've come to depend on
Mhm.
them. We have the very unsanctioned practice of spending the money first and then bringing it in.
Do you
Lucky.
use storytelling, story of the
Absolutely.
animal? Because I find that's how people buy into it. They'll give anything.
100%. The more we can tell the story, or we can even guess at the story based on circumstances and share the good and the bad with our donors, that's where we get results. There's a lot of preaching out there among social media classes, especially in animal rescue, where they tell us, don't share the bad, don't share the negative. People don't want to hear that. Fundraising in any sector, but especially in our sector, is a study of human psychology and sociology. Different messages hit different people. There are people who will only give once we've already achieved a positive outcome. There are people who will only give when there is a dire need right in front of them and they know their money is going to help immediately. There are people who will only give when we have a very sad story because they don't want to see that happen to another animal in the future. So we share the good, the bad, the ugly, knowing that out of, if we have 50,000 donors, they're going to be all segmented and they're all going to give for different reasons. And so we let them decide when to
Mhm.
give and for what purpose.
Do you approach the different social platforms differently? Like, would you have one message go out on Facebook and a totally different message go out on Instagram or LinkedIn?
No, I'd say we keep it pretty
Mhm,
consistent. Again, just because of the diverse population of people we're meeting with our
mhm.
stories. And if we pick one version of the story to tell on one platform, we're going to be missing out on a whole bunch of other sectors who might have otherwise given if we shared the whole story. So, no, we keep it pretty
Mhm.
consistent.
What does a normal week look like for you behind the scenes? What work no one sees, but that's essential to keeping animals moving through the system?
Yeah, well, our core work right now is still rescue, in addition to doing a lot of community outreach in very poor communities. Monday morning, our team of adoption coordinators, shelter representatives, foster dog coordinators, and adoption center directors are all communicating with the shelters we partner with in very rural areas to say, who are the animals you need to move this week? Who got adopted over the weekend? What special needs animals do you have? They're then compiling lists behind the scene. They're then pushing them out to our foster volunteers to see who steps up. We're running inventory to see who of our animals were adopted over the weekend, telling us what space we have at our farm, our adoption center, or in foster homes. We're looking at the pie charts and lists to tell us how many of each animal we have in certain categories. So we know if we're full on hounds or we're full on seniors, then we're probably not going to bring any of those in this week. We're going to look to other categories. And then there's the scramble to make sure we have enough crates in our van. And then we're in touch with dozens of other rescues in our area who rely on our transport help. Then we're going back and forth with the shelters to make sure that those dogs are getting the adequate vaccines, that we have got the crates to fit. Then we're finding volunteers to drive up to 5 hours to the meeting point to meet 5 or 6 or 10 shelters, to load the animals all in, to get them back here, get them scheduled for spay neuter, sort out who's going where. Then they're headed off to the fosters or spay neuter, and then we're gearing up for the weekend adoption events to start again.
Gosh.
So it's a mad rush every single week, every single
Mhm.
day.
Do you use technology to help you keep all of that organized, or are you still using pen and paper?
It's probably a little bit of both, but thank goodness I have fantastic staff who are pretty tech savvy, unlike me. The challenge with some of our work is that we work with very small, under resourced rural community shelters that don't have sophisticated shelter software or staff trained to use things like Google Docs. On our end, we're a well oiled machine in terms of technology and efficiencies, but we have to meet our shelters where they're at. That might include lists on emails that are getting copy and pasted by my staff into spreadsheets and transport runs. So it's an amalgamation of a lot of things based on where people are
Mhm.
at. We can't force certain shelters to step up into a new world just because they don't have the resources to do
Sure.
so. So we're going to make what they can do.
If you could wave a wand and cut out just one repetitive task that eats your time but adds little value, what would it be?
In an ideal world, we would get a list of animals on Monday needing rescue, my fosters. We would get every animal spoken for after one email plea. But what happens is we usually have to send 5 or 6 different pleas until we get all those animals spoken for. That's no one's fault. We happen to be in Washington, D.C., a very busy city, and people might not know on Monday if they have space to take a foster or if their travel plans are going to go through. We spend countless hours crafting emails in different ways to try to get foster volunteers to step up for every single animal. It would be nice if we just knew by Monday afternoon all the animals would be spoken for.
You rely on hundreds of volunteers. How many volunteers do you have?
It's hard to say, but at any given time, if we count our volunteer drivers, our fosters, folks who walks dogs, folks who donate things, it's in the thousands. That doesn't mean that every foster volunteer has a dog or cat at the same time because everybody needs time off, but it's well over 2,000 volunteers.
When your volunteer pipeline dips, how do you first notice it? Is it missed shifts, slower placements, inbox chaos? How do you feel it?
When it dips,
Mhm.
did you it's just slower response time to people stepping up and offering to do the tasks that we ask. In their defense, we probably put out close to 100 asks every week, fostering someone to drive and pick up the animals, bring them to an adoption event, volunteer at a puppy party, take a dog to the vet, pick up a medication for a cat. But we have tasks for every type of volunteer, but things start to take more than one request, more than two requests, more than three requests, then we know that volunteers are either dipping or volunteers are very
Tapped
busy or
out.
they're being tasked,
Mhm.
tapped out or tasked with other things going on in life that are keeping them from stepping up that quickly.
And do you see that happen naturally with the holidays coming up?
Ironically, in rescue, things tend to get really slow in the summer. When I first went into rescue, I was shocked because I thought for sure the summer, all the kids would be off, everybody would be looking for opportunities. But that's not the case because so many people take their
Mhm.
vacations. We have a real dip in volunteer activity in the summer. And then as soon as September 1 hits, boom, we start getting fosters, our adoptions go up, volunteers step up. And then definitely during the holidays, fosters tend to slow down because they're hosting family or they're traveling to see family, and bringing an animal into their home is not always possible.
Are there metrics that you would love to see in real time about your volunteers or your foster activity that would help you make decisions about bringing dogs in and things like that?
Yeah. I think if we were able to look back over the years and say, oh, we sent out in the month of November, we sent out 10 foster pleas and got a positive response at 80% this year, 70% another year, 60%, it probably would help us see trends.
Mhm.
We track a lot of things in terms of our animal data because we do have a sophisticated shelter software, but things like volunteer pleas and responses are not things that we currently
Mhm.
track. So that would
Mhm.
help.
Rescue cash flow is notoriously unpredictable. What is the pattern that catches you off guard most often?
I gotta say, I'm gonna flip my answer around because it's not necessarily the pattern that catches me off guard, but we have found a bit of a pattern that works over the years that I think is very telling and might help others. Every single week, we bring in anywhere from 5 to 50 animals. Several years ago, we looked at every single animal and realized that, our adoption fees per each animal rarely cover the costs we put in them. But like you said earlier, we know that people love to donate to very specific animals with very specific stories. So we said, let's give our donors the opportunity every single week to see the lists, the photos, and the stories of every single animal we are trying to save this week. And let's be honest with them. Let's tell them that in order for us to bring in these 25 cats and dogs, we need to secure sponsorship at such and such level for every animal. And we do those emails and those posts with each animal getting their own fundraising link. Almost 80% of the time, every single one of those animals is fully funded.
Wow.
And we do that every single week.
Wow.
So that was a game changer for us. And it's become something that has been very reliable for our cash flow and very reliable for us to know that, on Tuesday, we can probably go ahead and commit to all of these animals because our donors step up every week and we're able to track that and know that 80% of the time it's good.
So you solicit donations for individual animals as opposed
Yeah.
to for your organization? Probably
Uh,
both.
There are times when we have a medical fund, like most animal rescues do, and the medical fund is there to take care of expenses for animals that have injuries and illnesses. We will do various fundraisers throughout the year, specifically asking for funds for our medical fund, knowing that could touch any animal at any time. And that's very successful. But our most successful fundraising approach is for specific
I
animals,
love
where,
that
like you said,
idea. I don't
yeah.
know why I haven't thought of that before, and no one has mentioned that.
Well, it took us years. We've been now doing it successfully for at least 10, 12 years, but we were 8, 9 years into this before we thought we need to stop and listen to what our donors tell us and look at what they like to fund and think about what you like to fund yourself. If someone puts a cat or dog in front of you and says, we've got to Wednesday to rescue this animal, and you know that your $25 is going to get that animal on a transport truck and rescued and their life saved and them not euthanized, it's very
Mhm,
powerful. People have so many choices to give today to so many worthy causes. And sometimes it seems
mhm.
nebulous that if you can only give $25, but what is needed is $1 million, a lot of people just feel like,
What's the point?
what's the
Yeah,
point? I'd rather give it somewhere else. $25 out of $250 is a significant
right.
chunk. I think people really like knowing that even if they give $5, it literally does help save the life of an
Mhm.
animal. That's very powerful.
If you had one dashboard tile that could predict next month's crunch, medical costs, foster capacity, or adoption revenue, which would you want? What would be most beneficial?
Very good question. Thing that catches us off guard is unexpected illness in animals. And being faced with that decision in real time, whether or not we can raise or we should raise or we should treat, one puppy for $5,000, not knowing if we're going to have 5 more puppies with parvo, or if we're going to have a litter that's very healthy and their adoption fees will help fund the animals. Our biggest gamble sometimes is taken on our most popular product, and our most popular product still is puppies. So if we take in a litter of 8 healthy puppies and they're adopted quickly, those adoption fees after expenses fund animals that need a little bit more money. But if we take in a litter of 8 puppies and all of them break with parvo, that can be a $10,000-$15,000 outlay. And the unexpected nature of whether or not we'll make that money back quickly enough not to take away from other animals is really hard.
You invest in post adoption behavior help. What patterns do you see in preventable returns? And could early data or follow ups have caught them sooner?
Yeah, when we screen adopters, we hit them very hard with the messaging about positive socialization and training. The number one reason we get adult dogs returned to us who were adopted as puppies was because those cute little puppy behaviors when you have a 2-pound fuzzy little nugget, if left unaddressed, are not so cute when you've got a 50-pound full-grown dog jumping on counters, couches, beds at guests and lunging on leash. 95% of the time, the behaviors could have been successfully mitigated early on. We are very strong in our messaging that positive only socialization and training has to happen. We do our absolute best to steer our adopters away from trainers that use adversive, harsh, inhumane tactics like shock collars and hitting. And we have a number of trainers that work with us that we make available to our adopters, including an online training curriculum we've created ourselves that is free to Homeward Trails adopters so that they can jump on and participate every single month, multiple times, We know that cost is never a barrier to positive training. Right now, we're actually in the process of expanding that program with 2 additional trainers who reach out by email and text to the adopters of our dogs at week 1, at week 2, and week 3, making sure that we're landing in their inbox and that we're doing our best to move the priority for positive training up their to-do list. A lot of families have kids, they've got jobs, they've got travel. So it's very easy to see how puppy or dog training falls down a list of priorities. We do our very best to eliminate every single barrier or excuse there is not to do it by making it free, by reaching out to them, by giving them tips. So people are appreciative of it. I don't think we're doing a great job of tracking how many people take advantage of those programs, but that is something we're going to start doing.
Do you have a system that sends these nudges to the adopters before the behavior struggles tend to start, or do you rely on a human to do that?
They it's a little bit of both. We have a person in charge of doing post-adopter follow-up, but we do have a series of pre-written automated emails that go out. We pull lists from our shelter software based on adopters in the last week, in the last 3 weeks. That's based on studies about how long it takes dogs or puppies to settle. We're trying to hit them during the crucial weeks of that settling time to remind them that we're here and that training is important and we want to help
Mhm.
them.
What is something that you've tried to digitize or automate that just didn't stick, and why?
It's a good question. I think in some cases we've tried template language asking for volunteers, fosters, and donations. We've found people respond well to real time storytelling about specific animals that need us right now. Generic pleas for fosters, generic pleas for donations, generic pleas for volunteers. I think they just tend to get lost in the static of life. But we're able to be very specific and always tell people exactly how their contribution, whether of time or money, is going to save the life of specific animals. The response goes up by 90%
Mm,
our
yeah.
end, but it's worth it because if we get what we need by taking the time to share what we need in real time and be specific, then everybody
Mhm.
wins.
What is one area where automation could make a real difference?
I think going back to the struggle we have with getting information from our very rural shelters about what animals are available, what challenges those animals have, what needs those animals have. A lot of that takes a lot of time because these shelters are having to literally type it up individually each and every week. A software system that allows that information to go in once and then shelters to be able to easily pull a report and just churn them out to us would save us hours every single week. There's a lot of back and forth with different shelters, meeting them where they're at to get the information that we need.
Mhm,
But these are shelters also that often have 1, maybe 2 or 3 employees. So they're not just sitting at their computer churning out information to us about who the animals are. They're also getting the pictures. They're also cleaning the kennels. They're also meeting the public. They're also responding to animal control calls. Having the ability to put information in once and share it would be a game changer.
mhm, mhm,
We have that ability, but our shelter partners don't.
mm. What's the hardest truth the rescue world avoids about sustainability?
The hardest truth, the rescue world. Well, I think we cannot rescue our way out of the animal homeless crisis. And it's been a crisis for many years. I think rescues are wonderful and we are saving lives in real time every single day. But I've been doing this now for 22 years, and it hardly feels like we put a dent in some communities. And so we started a program during COVID called our Trails Up program, and we are now going to those communities every single month and providing free trap neuter returns for cats. We are providing free spay neuters for dogs. We are doing pet pantries to keep pets in good homes. We are providing funds for medical subsidies for people whose pets need everything from routine to emergency care. And if they don't get it, they're going to end up in the shelter. We are very focused on addressing the root of animal homelessness. And I think that's not, I mean, for us, it's our most
Mhm.
rewarding, I think, effective work. But rescues in general have kind of gotten on the hamster wheel and that we're just going, going, going. And it's very, very hard to get off that wheel. And that wheel keeps us looking at what is right in front of us now and grabbing it. And the next day, next day, next day. It's so hard to jump off the wheel and say, stop. What can we do to spend 30% less time for 50% more return in a month, in 5 months, in 2 years? It's just very hard not to save the animals in front of you every day, even if it's going to help you save more animals in 6 months. And no one really likes to talk about
Mhm.
that. I think rescue is notorious for just talking about how we're drowning, how overwhelmed we are, how tired we are, and how broke we are, all of which is true. But at some point, we all also have a choice to make. It's not an easy choice, but it is an important choice. And I think if we could get more rescues and shelters stopping and looking at how we can be more effective to actually make our work easier, it would be a game changer.
Mhm. Do you think that the industry underestimates how much emotional fatigue comes from the manual systems, the constant rework and the follow-up loops?
I don't think the industry underestimates that at all. I think the public,
Mm,
sadly, a lot of that falls on shelter workers and workers in shelters that are trying really, really hard not to euthanize animals, but they have to for space or lack of resources. And when the community beats them up without offering to be part of the solution, that's really hard and very unfortunate. Animal homelessness is not the shelter's fault. It is a community problem and it has to have community solutions. The community thinks, oh, it's a problem, but it's the shelter's job to fix it. And shelters cannot, with their 5 or 50 staff, fix the community members have to get involved. They have to be part of the solution. Part of our job is educating the community, not only about the problem, but how they can be part of the solution. It's
yeah.
too.
Unfortunately, the shelters tend to be reactive instead of
Yeah.
proactive, and you want to switch that around so that you're
Yeah.
solving the problems before they're a problem. But who has
Yes.
the time to do that when you're reacting to all of these animals that are landing on your doorstep?
Yeah, we've seen it happen. So we know the impact it makes when shelters can do it. We've had to go into communities and just push them to try little tiny things. We've got a couple communities that now I consider model communities in Virginia that 6 years ago were complete disasters. They are shining and doing everything we laid in front of them. We had to push them and then allow them to do it in their own time. But it does take leadership, it takes vision, it takes commitment, it takes tenacity, and it takes a lot of emotional strength. It doesn't always require a ton of money, but financial resources are helpful. In a lot of cases, I think shelters benefit more from community volunteer time than dollars coming
Right.
in. It is possible, but it's very hard to get up and
Mhm.
yeah, it's
If
really hard.
Homeward Trails could run exactly the way you wish, with steady funding and predictable volunteer flow, fewer returns, what parts would you still do by hand and what would you gladly pass off to a system?
I think the stuff we would still do by I don't know if you mean actually by hand or manually going
Like
places or
manually, as opposed to automation or AI.
yeah, I think there is, we spend a lot of time talking to adopters who apply to adopt animals, and we've decreased a lot of barriers over the years to make it very easy. Do I think there is a role for AI to talk to these adopters and be able to give them just as much information as we are and push adopters through the system very quickly? Absolutely. And that is one area I think would be wonderful. Where we can't replace ourselves is the very important field work we're doing, where we are physically going to communities and trapping animals or getting animals in for surgeries to do spay neuter, to go into very rural parts and trailer or in dilapidated homes and talk to the people and meet them. People who don't have internet, some people don't have running water and desperately need our services. So I think the application screening, the adoption process probably has good amount of benefits that could come through
Mhm,
automation,
mhm.
allowing us to do our, like you said before, kind of the proactive work we're doing for life saving
Right,
versus the reactive
right.
work.
So, what is one small change that you are going to make in 2026 to better the organization?
Yeah, great question because we've been talking a lot about this. We have a retreat about this next week. We recently started housing fewer dogs at our adoption center so that we could provide each dog more individual care, more individual marketing, with the goal that we would be able to move them out of our system into adoptive homes quicker. And if we move them out quicker, their length of stay is shorter, which means we can pull more dogs in. Dogs that sit in shelters start to develop kennel stress. There's nothing to replace an actual home. So we're going to trial greater creative marketing and incentives to get those adopters to come and get them sooner so that we can actually ultimately save more dogs every year, but do it in a little bit of a different way. Funding wise, we are looking to hopefully expand our Trails Up programs, which is where we go into communities and try to lift the shelters up to embrace more proactive approaches to sheltering and community work. Because the fewer animals needing to be rescued, the better for
Right.
everyone. There's only one way to make that happen, and that is getting fewer animals in shelters, fewer animals born, fewer animals given up for lack of resources.
This has been wonderful. Where can people learn more about you and Homeward Trails?
Very simple. They can check out our website, which is just homewardtrails.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram under Homeward Trails Rescue. You'll see all of our programs, our dogs and cats, volunteer opportunities, fundraising, and all of our fieldwork information as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. This was such a joy. I really enjoyed your questions. They're not like any other interview questions we've been asked before. So I really appreciate your angle. And I think it's dead on. I think your knowledge of the industry via your questions can be a real game changer for animal welfare. So thank you so much for
Thank you
that.
for saying that. Thanks for listening to Behind the Gate, where we get real about what it takes to run and sustain a pet business today. If you found this conversation helpful, share it with someone else in the industry who might need it. And you can watch every episode on our YouTube channel. If you're ready to make your own business a little lighter and more efficient, you can learn more about what we do at vellum-agency.com. See you next time.